The old man sat quietly in the driver's seat, his wrinkled hands resting on the steering wheel. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the suburban street. He had just left the grocery store, a simple errand he had done hundreds of times before. But this time was different. A sudden flash of red and blue lights illuminated the car's interior, and within seconds, a police officer was at his window, tapping aggressively on the glass. "Step out of the car." "Now," the officer barked, his voice sharp and commanding. The old man turned his head slowly, his expression calm but observant. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, his voice steady. The officer's jaw tightened. "License and registration. Now." Before the old man could respond, the officer yanked at the door handle, but it was locked. His frustration grew. "I said, step out of the vehicle." What happened next would change everything. But before we get to that, if you enjoy stories with powerful twists and real-life lessons, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. The elderly man sighed, reaching into his jacket pocket with deliberate slowness. "I'm just getting my ID," he said. The officer's hand shot to his holster, his stance shifting. "Slowly," he warned. The old man pulled out a worn leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal not only his driver's license but also a gleaming FBI badge. The officer scoffed, letting out a short, mocking laugh. "Oh, really? You expect me to believe that? An old man like you? That's cute." He leaned in, inspecting the badge with exaggerated skepticism. "Where'd you get this? Some online shop? Think you can pretend to be a federal agent?" The elderly man met his gaze without flinching. "That badge is real. I served over 40 years in the FBI," he said evenly. "And I know my rights." The officer squinted at the badge for a moment, then let out a sarcastic chuckle. 40 years in the FBI? That's a good one. What, were you filing papers? Making coffee for the real agents? He crossed his arms, clearly enjoying himself. "Come on, old man. Even if this were real, why would someone like you still be carrying it around?" Agent Reynolds sighed, shaking his head. "It's funny, people like you always underestimate experience. But let me tell you something, officer. You see this badge?" He held it up slightly. "It's not just a piece of metal. It represents thousands of cases, criminals brought to justice, and situations a rookie like you wouldn't last a second in." The officer rolled his eyes. "Oh yeah? Like what?" Reynolds leaned back slightly, studying him. "You ever been in a hostage negotiation? Stared down a cartel leader who had nothing to lose? You ever had to make a decision that would determine whether people lived or died in the next 10 seconds? He let the words hang in the air. "I have. More times than I can count." The officer's smug grin faltered for a split second, but he recovered quickly. "Right. Sure you have. And I'm guessing you just drive around now, flashing that badge to get out of traffic tickets?" Reynolds chuckled softly, but there was no amusement in it. "You think this is about avoiding a ticket? Let me ask you something, officer. Do you even know why you pulled me over?" The younger cop opened his mouth, then hesitated. "That's what I thought," Reynolds said. "You saw an old man, alone, driving a nice car, and you decided there had to be a reason to stop him. But you didn't run my plates first, didn't verify anything. You just saw what you wanted to see." For the first time, the officer didn't have a quick comeback. His posture shifted slightly, uncertainty creeping in. Reynolds didn't break eye contact. "This badge isn't a prop. It's a lifetime of service. And whether I'm retired or not, I still know how to read people. And right now, I'm reading you. You're not as sure of yourself as you pretend to be." The officer clenched his jaw, clearly trying to maintain control of the situation. But the balance had already shifted. The arrogance he had walked in with was cracking, piece by piece. And then, before he could respond, the sound of another siren filled the air. The officer smirked, shaking his head. "Yeah, right. And I'm the president. Step out of the car, old man, or I'll drag you out myself." The old man took a slow, measured breath. "I suggest you check my credentials before you make a mistake you can't undo." His voice was calm, but there was something in his tone, a quiet authority that made the officer hesitate for just a second. But arrogance overruled caution. The officer reached for the door handle again. Just as he was about to force it open, the sound of another siren filled the air. A second patrol car pulled up, and a higher-ranking officer stepped out, his face tightening as he recognized the man in the car. "Stand down," the senior officer barked, striding toward the scene. The younger cop turned, confused. "What? This guy's pretending to be FBI. I was about to." "He's not pretending," the senior officer cut in, his voice firm. "That man is Special Agent Thomas Reynolds. Retired. And if you had taken a second to verify his credentials, you'd know that." The younger officer's face drained of color. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He turned back to the old man, who was now watching him with a knowing look. Agent Reynolds finally spoke, his voice calm but edged with something cold. "You were so quick to judge me based on my age, weren't you? You assumed I was just some old man trying to act important. But you never stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, I had earned that badge through decades of service." The younger cop swallowed hard. I didn't." Reynolds took a slow step forward, his eyes locked onto the officer's. "You didn't what? You didn't think before you acted? You didn't consider that maybe, just maybe, the person in front of you had more experience than you could ever imagine?" His voice was still calm, but there was a weight behind his words, one that made the younger cop shift uncomfortably. "I've dealt with officers like you before," Reynolds continued. "Young, full of ego, thinking the badge gives you unlimited power. But let me tell you something, real power isn't about pulling someone over because you can. It's about knowing when to act and when to listen. And tonight, you failed that test." The officer looked down, shame creeping onto his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. Reynolds simply exhaled, shaking his head. "Maybe next time, you'll think twice." Reynolds raised a hand, stopping him. "Next time, do your job properly. Check before you assume." He looked at the senior officer. "I assume I'm free to go?" The senior officer nodded respectfully. "Of course, sir. I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding." Reynolds nodded, started his car, and pulled away. In the rearview mirror, he saw the younger officer standing stiffly, realizing just how badly he had messed up. And just like that, in a matter of minutes, arrogance had turned into regret. This story is a powerful reminder that assumptions can lead to serious consequences. Never judge someone based on appearances alone, you never know who you're dealing with. If this story made you think, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in this situation? Let's talk about it.